So, if you are learning C programming, then you must have seen this code. But the question is how this code works, how this structure works. So, in today's video, we will understand about the structure of a C program, and along with that, we will learn about preprocessor directives and header files. So, hi everyone, this is Abhinav. Welcome to the C programming series. Or today we are going to discuss the structure of C program in very detail. So, let's discuss about the structure. So, if I will discuss the structure of a C program, then first it is comments. Comments are generally for documentation purpose. This is for programmers. This is for us so that we can document our program very well. Generally, this is ignored by the compiler. Means compiler ignores the comments. So comment is just for documentation purpose. Then after we have preprocessor directive. This part. What is this? This is a preprocessor directive, and this is pre-processed before compilation. See the name, as the name suggests, preprocessor directives means these are pre-processed before the compilation. So in this case, this is a preprocessor directive which is including the header file. stdio.h is a header file and has include is a preprocessor directive. So this preprocessor directive is attaching this header file with your program. So the role of preprocessor starts from this particular point. Then after we have global declarations. Whatever variables you create in your program, that can be categorized into two parts: local variables and global variables. Don't worry about them. We will discuss about local variables and global variables in very detail in upcoming videos. I will just give you a quick overview right now. Global variables are those variables which can be accessed anywhere in the program, means they are accessible throughout the program. And then after we have main function. So this is your main function, and inside main function you write your code. Inside the main function you write your code, and your compilation as well as execution of the program starts from the main function. And whatever the code you want to write, whatever the instructions you want to write, you will write it inside the main function. Those are your actual instructions of your program. At the end there is a return statement in your main function. So in main function you will have body, means instructions, and then after at the end there is a return statement. What does return statement means? Return statement means program has been successfully executed. So that is indicated by the return statement. Now you have understood the structure of a C program. Coming to the next part. Next part is preprocessor directives. So we will discuss preprocessor directives in little bit detail. Whenever you write a program and whenever you hit the run button or compile button, it will not go to the compiler directly. First it will go to the preprocessor. Means if you want to understand the flow of your program, then see, this is your program. So first it will go to the preprocessor, and then after it will go to the compiler, and then after compiler will generate the output, means that is machine code, either 0 and 1. Before compilation your program will go to the preprocessor. So what preprocessor will do? Preprocessor will modify your program before compilation. What preprocessor does? Preprocessor modifies your program before compilation. It modifies your program, means it will do something with your program before compilation. So preprocessor are special instructions which starts with hash. Preprocessor are special instructions in your program which starts with hash And what it will do, it will do some modifications with your program. For example, see hash include. So see, this is starting with hash. So instructions which start with hash are preprocessor directives. For example, one more preprocessor directive is hash define pi 3.14. See, this is an example of preprocessor directive. Hash include stdio.h, hash include math.h, hash define pi 3.14, hash define range int max. So there can be multiple preprocessor directives, but generally in our programming we are going to use these two preprocessor directives, hash include and hash define. So talking about preprocessor directive, it will start with hash and it will not have a semicolon. It will not have a semicolon. There is no semicolon in preprocessor directive. And we all know that it is pre-processed before the compilation. So I hope this is clear. What preprocessor will do, preprocessor will modify your program and it will do something with your program before the compilation. So what it does, see, there are two types of preprocessor right now we know. First one is hash define and second one is hash include. So see, hash include is used to attach a header file. So if you want to attach a header file with your program, then you will use hash include. And hash define is used to define constants or define macros. Don't worry about the macros, we will discuss about them in our upcoming videos. Now see, I told you that it will modify your program before the compilation. So what it does with your program, let's see. For example, this is your program and you have used hash include stdio.h, and then after the rest are your instructions of your program. So what this will do, see this stdio.h header file, see the name stdio.h, a standard input output.h is the extension of header file. So we will discuss about the header file in detail, but as of now, just know that header file contains some definitions or declarations of functions. So what this preprocessor directive will do, this preprocessor directive will copy the contents of this header file and it will paste it over here. What it will do, it will copy the contents of this header file and it will paste it over here in your program. So now this will be replaced by the content of header file. So your program will look like this. First there will be the contents of header file, then there will be the instruction. These are the contents of header file and then after these are your instructions. Next one is hash define. Hash define pi 3.14. What does this means? This means you are defining pi as 3.14. So in your program, wherever pi is written, what this preprocessor will do, this preprocessor will replace this pi value with 3.14. So in your program, wherever you have written pi, that will be replaced by 3.14. I hope this is clear. Generally in our programming, we are going to see two main preprocessor directives, that is hash include and second one is hash define. Hash include is used to include the header files or library files, and hash define is used to define constants or macros. I hope this is clear. So the next thing is header files. Now we will discuss about header files. Header file contains some predefined and ready-made functions. Header file contains predefined functions. For example, you must have seen hash include stdio.h. So what is this? This is a header file. What is the name of header file? A standard input output header file. So what does this header file contain? This header file contains the declaration as well as definitions of all the input output related functions. A standard output header file contains the declarations as well as definitions of all the input output related functions. For example, whenever we want to print something on the console, we are going to use printf function. Whenever we want to take input from the user, we are going to use a scanf function. So what are this printf and scanf? Printf and scanf are input output functions, but they are already predefined in C language in this particular header file, in this stdio.h header file. So whenever you want to use input output functions in your program, you will have to include this header file. For example, there are some mathematical functions like a square root that is already predefined. So if you want to use this function, you will have to include the respective header file. For example, if you want to use a square root, then you will have to include math.h header file. Means header files are like a toolbox, and if you want to use a particular tool, use the toolbox, take out the tool and use it. So it is like a toolbox and the functions are tools. If you want to use a function, you can directly use it. It's just you will have to attach the header file. You will have to include the respective header file. Now there are two types of header file. First is system header file, and second one is user defined header file. stdio.h, this is a system header file. Math.h, this is a system header file. But user defined, see the name, user defined means it is defined by the user. What does this means? This means you can create your own header file as well. Means header file created by the user. Header file created by user. So if you want to attach your own header file and if you want to attach a system header file, then there is a little bit of difference in the syntax. So if you want to include the system header file, then you will have to use angular brackets. And if you want to use include any user defined header file, then you will have to write it inside the double quotes. For example, let's suppose has include stdio.h. So this is a system header file. So this is included with the help of angular brackets. Now let's suppose I created a header file named myfile.h. So how you will include this? It will be included like this: has include double quotes myfile.h. So one thing which you will keep in mind, that you can create your own header files and you can use it by including it like this in your program. No semicolons. Header files have, see, preprocessor directives have no semicolons. So now you already know what preprocessor does and what is a header file. I hope this is clear to everyone. Let's quickly summarize this. Preprocessor runs before the compilation, and preprocessor directives start with hash. There is no semicolon. For example, hash include stdio.h. So hash include is a preprocessor directive which is used to add a file or include a file, or another preprocessor directive is hash define, which is used to define some constants or macros. I hope this is clear. Let's quickly summarize this structure. First there will be comments. Generally this is used for documentation purpose. Then preprocessor directives to include a file, header file, or to define some constants. Then there are global variables which can be accessed anywhere in the program. And then there is main function which contains your actual instructions of your program. Preprocessor directives. Preprocessor directives are programs which are pre-processed before the compiler. Means your program first goes to the preprocessor, then preprocessor will modify your program, and then after it goes to the compiler, and then compiler converts it into machine language. Examples of preprocessors has include and has define. So preprocessor directives start with has, there is no semicolon at the end. Has include is used to attach a header file, and has define is used to define constants or macros. Now what, how it changes your program? Let's suppose this is your program and you are attaching this stdio.h header file. So what it will do, preprocessor will copy all the instructions of this particular header file and it pastes it over here, so that now your program looks like this. First it contains the contents of header file, then your instructions. In the same way, if you are using a hash define header file, so hash define is used for declaring the constants. So in this case, wherever in your program it is pi or whatever you are declaring as a constant, or you are whatever you are defining as a constant, so that will be replaced by this particular value. Then after we will talk about header files. Header files contains predefined functions. For example, stdio.h. This is a standard input output header file. It contains the declaration as well as definition of all input output related functions. Scanf is used to take input from the user, and printf is used to print something on the console. So these are used with the help of header files. If you want to use these functions in your program, you will have to include this header file. For example, there is a function that is a square root. What it does, it finds out the square root of a number. So if you want to use this function in your program, you will have to include the math.h library files. Now there are two types of header files. First one is system header file and user defined header file. System header files already defined in C language. For example, stdio.h, math.h, these are system defined header file. But user defined header files are header files which are created by the user. System header files are included by angular brackets, and user defined header files are included inside the double quotes. It's like this. I hope it is clear to everyone. That's it for this particular video. Thank you. Bye bye.